welcome to a writing chat. There will be no vlog for this video because I couldn't record. I was all set to make I reached halfway on my second draft video and I couldn't record it because my memory card for my camera broke and I could not put the memory card in the camera. And so I had to continue writing. I wasn't gonna wait for my card to arrive. You know, I ordered one, but it takes a few days. So I did reach 50,000 words. I passed that milestone and couldn't record it, but now my memory card came and I'm ready to talk about being halfway done with draft 2. For those that are new here, hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm writing my very first book, and today we're gonna talk about a multitude of different things relating to making it to the halfway point of draft 2. I made a mojito mocktail so I can be refreshed. It's really hot outside, so I didn't feel like making tea or anything. I wanted something cool to drink. So I will be sipping on this throughout the video. Feel free to grab a beverage for yourself. And I have a list of things on my phone. I sat down because since I wasn't recording, I had made notes of everything I wanted to talk about. So first I'm gonna talk about just in general, my progress, how many days it took, what my word counts have been. Then I'm going to talk about how my draft is going. Is it going good? Is it going bad? I'm gonna go through, this was really interesting, things that have helped me write draft 2 better. And this is in the context of what did I do differently this time around compared to draft 1 that is making me so productive and that is making my writing so much better. And then we're gonna talk about some things that aren't going so great. Because of course, it's only draft 2. There are things that aren't going so great and I wanna talk about that too. I forgot my computer, it's over there, hold on. All right, now let's do some analysis on the data because I am a little bit of a data nerd. So I'm starting off with how is the first draft going in terms of word count and how many days it took me to write it and what my plans are for the second half of the book. I am counting 50,000 words as halfway done. An adult fantasy novel, which is what I'm writing, is typically 100,000 words. So I'm calling 50,000 words halfway done. And for those that are new here, I track my word counts every day. And so I always look at this data and it helps me kind of prepare for form an expectation of what I will write on a daily basis or in a certain time frame. I wrote the first half of this book in 26 days. That's really, really fast. A large part of this is I am writing every single day and I am putting out really high word count days occasionally. I'm a full-time author right now, so I have lots of time to sit down and write. Typically on my high word count days, I'm averaging around 4,200 words per day and I have multiple days of that. But there are days where I'm writing 600 words or something low just because I have things going on. But I'm really satisfied that I wrote half this book in less than a month. My goal for the second half of this book, so the next 50,000, is to again finish it in less than a month. It's actually kind of weird. I reached 50,000 words on August 1st. So my goal is to finish this book by August 31st. It ends up being really easy to figure that out. My goal also, something I'm going to strive for, is to write 2,000 words per day. If I write 2,000 words per day, I will finish this book in 25 days. Now, am I gonna write 2,000 words every day? Probably not, but I'm gonna push myself because on the days where I didn't spend all day writing, my word counts could be a little low. I see a 200 and a 600. I know they could be higher, especially because this is the only thing I've got really going on right now. Finishing this book by the end of the month is very doable. I do have some more ambitious plans of having more higher word count days, which may decrease the amount of time it takes to write this book. So we'll see. But that's how it's going in terms of word count and how long it's taken me so far. Now let's talk about how it's going. I have to say, draft 2 is going so well. I never imagined that it would be going this well, especially draft 1. Draft 1, sometimes I really struggled. I wasn't sure where I was going with the story. Things didn't make sense. I had plans changing halfway through. So far, 50% of the way in, my story has remained pretty much the same as when I started. And the story is flowing out of me when I write. It just comes out. I'm not debating what to write. The whole plot just flows. And I have a very clear picture of where I'm going with this story, which helps when I'm writing because I'm not second guessing myself. I'm very clear on what to write, what needs to happen in order for the next stuff to happen. and it's just going really, really well. Also, my writing is a lot better, and I'm going to talk about that shortly, but I've just noticed like my sentence structure is better and it's easier for me to write. Like I'm having an easier time varying my sentence structure, and dialogue is flowing a lot better. I'm doing a better job at describing things. It's not perfect by any means, but I'm really satisfied with this draft. It's doing what it's supposed to do, and what I'm focusing on is what I'm supposed to focus on at this time, what I want to focus on. And it's just going like overall, I'm a lot more excited about this draft than I was about draft 1. This is going so much better, and it just makes me look forward to draft 3 and 4 and 5 just to see how that process is. But then also I'm just getting excited about seeing my book improve. Now we're going to talk about some fun stuff, which is why is draft 2 so much better than draft 1? What have I been doing that is making this so much better? Why is my writing better? Why is my story flowing better? This is, I don't want to say easy, but I'm not getting the amount of writer's block or uncertainty that I was before. And so I sat down and said, what am I doing that's kind of making this process better? And first and foremost is my chapter by chapter outline. This outline has saved me. I typically write my outline in an index card and do it scene by scene, and I organize my scenes and rearrange my cards. But what I did differently this time was after I made my scene by scene outline, I made a chapter by chapter outline. And in this chapter by chapter outline, I put what scenes are happening in each chapter. So all I did was go in an Excel sheet. This isn't some crazy outline. I went in an Excel sheet and did chapters 1 through whatever. And for each chapter, I wrote one sentence. And it's basically like, character is here and does this. That's it. And I have that for every chapter. I originally did this because when I wrote the first draft, I was having a lot of issues determining where my chapters ended and the next one began. And that was a struggle of mine because I didn't plan that out, because all I had was a scene by scene outline. This time around, I wanted to kind of give myself a leg up a little bit and help myself out. So I decided to try a chapter by chapter outline to organize my thoughts a little bit, to prepare me for what was going to be in each chapter. This has been a lifesaver. I can't tell you how useful a chapter by chapter outline is. I've developed this routine with my outline that before I start writing a chapter, I look at what I wrote, for my sentence summary of what happens in the chapter, and that just helps prepare me for what I'm going to write. I still pants a lot of my work. Like it basically says, for example, the chapter might be, these two characters have a conversation, but I haven't written down what they're talking about, what their emotions are. Like, I don't have any of that written. So I still make up a lot of the chapter on the spot, but just knowing that they're going to have this conversation, that's all I need to know for that chapter. And that's helped a lot. And then the second part of this is when I finish writing a chapter, I go back to the chapter by chapter outline and update it. This has helped because a lot of times I'm writing a scene and then I decide that it needs to be 2 chapters. And so I go ahead and update it in my chapter by chapter outline and just add the chapter in there. By keeping this updated as I go, it's really helpful for me to see what changes I've made and how the story is progressing in a really short summary of the whole book. Also, where this has really helped is when I have to go back and find things. Especially now that I am like halfway through the book, I'm starting to have to reference things that happened earlier in the book. Like maybe I want to reference a conversation that some characters had, or I want to reference a place that I mentioned earlier in the book. Before, when I was writing draft 1, I would just have to scroll back and read a few lines and then scroll some more and read a few lines and figure out where I was and where that conversation was, and it would take forever. Now, because I have this chapter by chapter outline, I know, I'm like, okay, this conversation happened earlier in the book, and I just go look at my chapter by chapter outline, find where the conversation is, and go to that chapter. It has significantly decreased the amount of time I spend trying to find things I previously wrote in my own draft. It's been super helpful to me. I love this outline, and it's definitely something I'm going to keep doing as I progress in my drafts. Another thing I started doing differently this time around was watching writing advice videos every single day. Typically, how I approached learning was I learned when I needed help on something. So if I was world building, like spending some time world building, I'd watch some videos on world building. If I was trying to plan a character arc, I would watch a character video. Typically, a lot of my learning happened in the brainstorming planning phase. And then when I wrote draft 1, I don't think I watched a single video about writing. This time around, it was kind of by accident. I think it was when I was re-outlining my book. I started re-watching some lectures online to help me out, and I realized that I really benefited from listening to lectures while I was in the middle of the process. And just kind of as an experiment, I started watching writing videos while I was writing draft 2. And what I found is this is extremely helpful in terms of improving my writing technique and my planning and plotting for this book. I think typically, when I have watched writing videos, I haven't been in the middle of my book, so I'm not sure exactly, the story of the characters. I'm not really familiar and fresh with the details of my novel when I'm watching these videos. Watching them while I am seriously writing, like maybe I just stopped writing or I'm about to start writing again for the day. It allows me to evaluate what I'm currently working on, as opposed to this general concept of what I have. Like I just watched some videos on world building and character development, and while I'm watching the videos, I'm in real time critiquing the work I'm doing. Like, oh yeah, I'm doing that right now, that's good. Or I'm like, oh no, they said that's a bad thing to do and I did that. Or I didn't include this thing they suggested I do. Obviously, you don't take every piece of writing advice, but overall, it's been a good kind of check-in for me where I'm actively evaluating my work on a daily basis. And it's helped me improve my writing and my planning. And I think it's insight that I may not have had until I possibly sent it to beta readers or took a really fine-tooth comb with the draft at some point later down the road. So I think it's given me a little bit of a head start into the critical analysis of my novel. And it's also really helped me in general just with prose, which I didn't necessarily anticipate. And this actually happened yesterday, which was crazy. I was watching a video and it was a very specific video about prose and technique. So it wasn't about world building and character development. It was like your writing. They gave a piece of advice and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I kid you not, within like a minute of me starting writing that night or last night, I caught myself doing it. I was like, oh my gosh. And it was something I never would have imagined or even thought was a problem. And I actually found myself doing it a few more times and having to catch myself and kind of like recorrect my sentence structure. And it's just, if I hadn't watched that video, I would have never known, and I would have continued writing with the way that sentence structure was, which there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but the way that I'm writing that type of sentence now is so much better. And I may never have caught that or learned about that for the entirety of this book. Maybe if I hired an editor, I could have. Maybe a reader could point it out, but it's something that like I can actively fix right now. And I just find that being able to make small changes like that while you're writing is really helpful. Okay, the last thing that has helped with writing my second draft is reading a chapter of a book, an already published book, over and over and analyzing it. You always hear people say, if you're writing, you need to read because you learn by reading other people's works and you learn about story structure and how writing style affects the reader. And that is 100% true. And I'm an avid reader. I read a lot. I enjoy reading. And ever since I started writing, I do tend to look at books with a critical eye. But what I never did was like truly analyze it. When I'm reading, I might read a line or something and I'll be like, oh, that's an interesting way to do XYZ, or oh, that's a writing device to do whatever. But then I just kind of forget about it and move on. And what I did was I picked either a series of scenes or a particular scene that I remembered from a book, and it can be any book. I just picked a few that I had, and I reread the same chapter multiple times, and I analyzed it. And I said, what is it that makes this book either give the reader some kind of emotion or help them describe something? And I really just read this stuff over and over and really thought about it from a writer's perspective. And I had never really done that before, and it really helped me. I'm still learning from it, but it's definitely impacted the way that I write. Like, I come at my writing more as, how would the reader feel if they read a sentence like this? Like, would this sentence make them feel the emotion that I want them to feel? And I think the other thing that this has helped me do is just read critically and analyze writing itself. I don't think I've ever sat down and truly analyzed a piece of writing, and that's helped me kind of analyze my own, which I have found very helpful. And to finish off, let's talk about what hasn't been going so well. Because even though things have been going well, there are some things that aren't, and they're really bothering me. The first thing is, this book is going to be way too long. I didn't think this would be a problem initially because my first draft was 90,000 words. So that's close to 100,000 words, which meant it was kind of right on track. But I already know I'm 50,000 words in, and I already know I'm going to end up having to write more than 50,000 words to be done with this book. When I started this book, I think I started with 33 chapters. Since then, I've added 8 chapters, bringing my chapter total to 41. And that's only me being halfway done with the book. I have noticed myself adding chapters quite a lot throughout the whole thing. It wasn't a surprise. I think the main driver of this is I am writing scenes that take way too long. What I mean for this is I plan for a scene in a chapter and I'm writing it and I'm like, oh, it's so long that it needs to move to the next chapter. Or maybe it's an event and I'm writing this event and it's so long that I need to make it 2 or 3 chapters just to finish it. And so that's how I've been adding chapters. Also in my chapter by chapter outline, I pre-planned what scenes were going in, but as I go through and the scenes get longer, I'm like, there's no room for a 3rd scene. I need to make it a new chapter. And so that's how my chapter count has just been increasing and increasing and increasing. I didn't really pay much attention to it. Like, I noticed I was doing it, but I didn't really realize it was a problem until I wrote this really big event that I talked about in my last vlog. This event was 7 chapters long. These 7 chapters correspond to about 2 to 3 days of time. In no book do you need that amount of chapters to cover that period of time, unless it's like the end of the book or the end of a series or some huge giant thing that you need to like wrap up a bunch of things. But this was like not even 50% of the way in. I wrote this scene and I just kind of realized it's way too long. And there are scenes, when I thought about it a little bit, there are scenes that I can cut from this or ways to consolidate it. But I'm just having a difficult time because I have all these scenes planned and all these scenes in my head to go in this book. And I'm just making it too long. So eventually I'm gonna have to cut a bunch of scenes. I think I can cut some from the beginning as well. I'm not gonna do anything right now to address this because I wanna write the book the way it is planned to be and deal with it later, like fixing it later. Also, cutting chapters is kind of like what authors do. I'm gonna have to deal with it. One thing I have noticed is I'm starting to become very attached. I am becoming very attached to my characters and their journey. I'm becoming attached to the story. The thought of axing some of these chapters that I love so dearly, I know it's gonna have to be done, but it still really hurts. Like, I'm already upset and I haven't even done it yet. This is probably my biggest problem in this draft so far, is just that it keeps expanding. I'm gonna have to see what I'm gonna do at the end of the draft. There's nothing I can really do at this point, but it's just something that I'm now truly aware of and trying to figure out how to fix. The other thing I'm struggling with right now is the overall timeline of my book. It really happens over too short of a period. And it goes back to me writing so much in a scene and writing, giant spans of chapters that only encompass 2 or 3 days, time is not passing very quickly in my book. Events are passing quickly, but time is not. I think I talked about this before in another video, but the first chapter happens and then there's like a week break. And then the next, I don't know, I'm not gonna open my computer again and look, but the next probably 5 chapters all take place in the span of like 24 hours. Then there's like, you know, I'd say a decent amount of time passing, but then we have this event that is 7 chapters that occurs over 2 to 3 days. More time needs to pass. The characters aren't having enough time, real time, to get to know each other and build relationships. I really see it when I'm writing because when I try to write progression in relationship, and it's not even like a romantic relationship, like progression in friendships or progression in family relationships, it just feels forced. It doesn't feel like something that would happen within the time frame that it's happening. And the reason I'm struggling a little bit with this book is because I've built a timeline in with the plot, which means a lot of the events are based around a time frame, but that time frame is really short. If I lengthen it, to me, it doesn't make sense. So I'm struggling just in general with how to balance a good plot line with time passing and trying to figure that out. It's not something, I'm gonna keep writing the book, but it's just something I don't quite know how to fix yet. And I'm gonna have to think really hard about how to fix it. It's gonna be something that might take some time. I think it's gonna require some kind of plot or story change in order to allow the time to pass more quickly. So I'd say overall, the biggest struggles that I have with this are probably more recognizing inadequacies in my story or plot. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this, though, is a lot of these issues that I'm seeing is because I'm starting to really critically analyze my story and my writing. Like the chapters, like the scenes and events being too long, and time not passing very quickly in my universe. These are things I've noticed because I've started taking a really critical eye to my story. So I think it's a good thing I'm catching these things, but then my lack of experience in solving these problems is starting to show because I'm just not sure how to do it. I know I'll figure it out eventually. That's not the issue. It's just where I am right now in the writing process. But it gives me hope that because I'm thinking so critically and kind of analyzing these bigger issues that I'm finding with my story, that I can find more bigger issues if they're there. And the ones that I do find, I'll be able to have enough time to fix them and make a really good plan for them. Draft 2 has been a really fun ride. I have to say, I'm really enjoying it. And I have learned so much doing draft 2, and I feel like I'm getting better at my writing every day. I was really excited to do this check-in with you and talk about how draft 2 is going. I can't wait to finish it. It should be less than a month before it's finished. And I will definitely check in with you when draft 2 is finished, and we're gonna talk all about my plans for draft 3 and beyond when that happens.